So welcome everyone to a Blueprint Career Services presentation of Industry Insights, HR Career Perspectives. My name is Ann Park. I'm the career strategist here at Blueprint Career Services, and I am so pleased to be here. Let's quickly do an access check. I want to find out from the folks who are participating, can you hear me? Can you see the presentation clearly? Are there any other access needs that might affect your participation? Please do share in the chat answers to these questions. Just to remind you, to let folks know, thank you, Manju, that this presentation is being recorded and will be shared on our Blueprint Career Services portal in about a week or so. It's also, so there'll be an audio recording and a video recording, which will be available on YouTube in about 2 weeks or so. So you can always check it out and refer people to that if you'd like to. Great. Next slide, please. First, next I would like to do a very important land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates, and for thousands of years, it's been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. And in reflection of this land acknowledgement and my own work to increase my awareness of the history of Indigenous peoples from across this land, I reflect on and I work to decolonize history as it's written from a primarily white male cisgender colonialist perspective. And I also acknowledge how I have benefited as a colonizer settler from the experiences, the terrible and unfortunate history of the Aboriginal people, Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. And I continue to educate myself. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so let's take care of some housekeeping items next. Please remember to keep your mics off during the presentation, but we do encourage you to turn your cameras on in order to fully engage in the presentation. It's completely optional, but it is helpful for us. You'll probably get more of the experience. And I don't know about the rest of our wonderful panelists, but for me, it's a little bit challenging when I'm literally speaking to a wall, little bit challenging. So it's your choice, of course. Post your questions and comments in the chat, and questions will be responded to at the end of the moderated Q&A. So the moderated Q&A will be about an hour, and we'll get to the questions from all of you at the end, so from about 1 to 3:30. And for questions that haven't been answered, we will go through the transcript and send a list of these questions that have not been answered to our incredible panelists and ask them to respond, and we'll share the answers with all of you. Please note this session is being recorded and will be posted on our Blueprint Career Services portal. Next slide, please. Thank you. So before we start and really with what we're here for, which is to find out about the incredible HR industry from our esteemed guests, I'd like to tell all of you a little bit about Blueprint Career Services. So you're already registered into the portal, so you know all about that, but let's talk about our services in addition to our free panels. Next slide, please. Thank you. So if I could just ask everyone who's here what they think, what is the number one question that I get asked as a career strategist? And I've been working in this industry as an employment counselor and as a career strategist for maybe 20 years or so, believe it or not. But I'm just wondering from the audience, what do you think is the number one question that people ask me when they meet with me? What do you think? Any guesses? You can type it in the chat. Any questions? How do I beef up my cover letter? Yeah, absolutely. What's the most popular question besides that? That's a good one though. It's quite popular. Yeah, a lot of people come to me with resumes. There's something wrong with my resume. Yeah, lots of questions of resumes. AI, yeah, absolutely. Any other guesses? How do I get a job? How do I get an interview? Yeah, absolutely. Best career paths. How can I search for a job? Great. Well, these are all really good answers, and I have been asked these questions before, but the number one question that I get asked, or the most popular question I get asked, is by working with you, can you guarantee me a job? And my answer is yes, I can guarantee that by working with me, you will get a job. But in order to do that, you need to work closely with me and really put in the effort to achieve your goals. And together, we can help you to achieve your career goals. Next slide, please. And in fact, over 90% of all the folks that I've worked with over the years who are driven to succeed and really do work closely with me, who make sure to make looking for work a full-time job and who take chances and who utilize their networks the best of their abilities and who leverage their strengths, 90% of those folks do get employment. Next slide, please. Thank you. And now I'm going to speak briefly about the offerings that we have here at Blueprint Career Services in addition to our free panels. So we do have Career Nav, which are our one-on-one career strategist sessions with me. And so you'd be receiving individual support from me. I facilitate everything here, by the way. And we work with you until you achieve your career goals. So that's ongoing. And it's incredible support to have a coach such as myself with so many years to help you to achieve your career goals. Next, we have something called the Clifton Strengths Workshop, which is an incredible opportunity to find out what your strengths are, learn the science behind Clifton strengths, and then find out how to use your strengths to elevate your careers. A lot of the folks I've worked with over the years, they have the education, they have the experience. Some don't, but for those who are able to identify their strengths and use them to market themselves and as they network, I can guarantee that they find work. Next, we have something called the Career Wayfinding Series workshops. It's a series of three-hour workshops based off the best-selling New York Times series, Design Your Life. And it's a really strategic approach to achieving your career goals. So that way you are in the driver's seat of finding work instead of being at the mercy of employers. Next, we have something called Alternative Careers Workshops, and those are primarily for internationally trained professionals from regulated professions who are looking to seek alternative careers in Canada. And of course, we have our Real Talk and our Industry Insights. So obviously, this is our Industry Insight an industry insight panel, but we also have our Real Talk panels, which are also free, and we discuss specific issues as they pertain to employment. The one that we had last month, which was very popular, was networking for introverts. We also had one on hacking the ATS, so you can check them out on our website or on YouTube. And for more information, contact scs.blueprint@utoronto.ca or ask questions in the chat. And just to let all of you know, if you're interested in any of our offerings, please do sign up right away. They get filled very quickly. We're extremely busy. And this is me, so please do reach out to me on LinkedIn. I do share posts that have been very helpful for folks out there, and I've been receiving a lot of positive feedback. In fact, I posted one today on approaching strangers at a coffee shop as a way to network, which has been a tactic encouraged by a number of career professionals that I adamantly disagree with. So check that out. Follow me on LinkedIn. There I am. I changed the photo of the background. Looks much better. Next slide, please. Great. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our incredible panelists. That's why we're here, right? So first, I'd like to introduce Shelley Barnett. So Shelley Barnett is an executive director of human resources with more than 20 years of experience in the financial services industry. Shelley has applied her passion for people development, learning, diversity, equity, and inclusion to her dual roles of HR people manager and client advisory through strategic partnerships with JP Morgan Chase business leaders across functions in Canada. Shelley is a DE and I champion, and she co-chairs the Black Organization for Leadership Development, BOLD, for JP Morgan Chase Canada, is an active member of Women on the Move and a part of the leadership team of the Regional DEI Committee. She approaches all aspects of her role with an educator's lens and a commitment to supporting employees, managers, and teams in creating a culture that provides opportunities for learning and growth. Shelley also teaches part-time at U of T's School of Continuing Studies. We are so lucky that our panelists, including Shelley, are instructors here. Just goes to show you the caliber of folks we have. She's a master's in adult education and is a certified human resources leader with the Human Resources Professional Association. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our esteemed panelist, Shelley Barnett. Hi, Shelley.
Hey, Anne, thanks so much for the intro.
Thank you. Very impressive. Thank you so much. And very excited to hear what your insights on this very interesting and dynamic industry. Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelist, Elizabeth Charles, MED, PhD candidate, and CHRL. Elizabeth Charles, CHRL, all right, I mentioned that, that's important, is the AVP Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Securian Canada. In her capacity as AVP DEI, Elizabeth oversees and leads the organization's inclusion strategy and multi-action plan and collaborates with senior leadership to ensure that DEI is embedded into every aspect of the organization's culture and product offerings. As the former head of the equity, diversity, and inclusion practice at a leading Canadian law firm in downtown Toronto, Elizabeth created and facilitated interactive workshops, led program development, policy reviews, and provided ongoing coaching and support to help employers build a more diverse and inclusive workforce that drives success and innovation. Prior to her DEI roles, Elizabeth has had an extensive career in human resources, including most recently as the Vice President, People, Culture, and Equity in the not-for-profit sector. An educator and writer, she is also completing her doctoral studies at OISE, the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, at U of T. Elizabeth's research focuses on intersectionality and inclusive leadership. Elizabeth also teaches HR management at U of T School of Continuing Studies. Again, one of our incredible instructors. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panelist, Elizabeth Charles. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Anne. Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And last but not least, I would like to introduce our panelist, Tony Karekis. In over 20 years of consulting, Tony has completed 200 consulting initiatives. Wow. Providing strategic and implementation guidance for a wide variety of industries and sectors. For example, retail, food, manufacturing, technology, NFP, with clients from private to global companies. He has client relationships spanning many years, working with senior leaders to understand challenges, develop and lead initiatives in structure, compensation, performance, strategy, process, and organizational transformation. Tony has served on the board of Toronto Human Resources Professionals and the York Region chapter, chaired a provincial committee. He chairs 2 CHRO forums, presented at industry forums, and teaches compensation at, you guessed it, U of T School of Continuing Studies. Welcome, Tony. Hello.
Thank you, Anne.
Wow, amazing. Thank you. So these are incredible panelists. And now let's stop sharing the screen. I'm just speaking to our incredible administrator, project manager. So let's get into some questions I would like to ask all of you. All right, so are we ready? Okay, so the first question is, we can stop sharing the presentation. We'll get to that later. So I'd like to ask the first question, which is, how did you get started in HR? What has been your career trajectory up to this point? So I know that from my understanding, a number of you have very interesting and diverse careers in HR, and it really is a varied industry, and that you can use different skills and do a lot of different things. So if I can maybe start with Shelley, I'd love to hear about how you got started, what your career trajectory has been up to, that looked like up to this point, Shelley.
Okay. And hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Loves the energy, Anne. Like you bring real pumped up, so I'm happy to be here. Um, my career, so I started out actually in social services. That's what I went to school for. And then I worked part-time at a Canadian financial institution. And then I, as it happens, my career in HR actually started out by luck because there was an opening, an entry-level position in HR that opened up. And someone I knew was hiring for the position, asked me if I would be interested. And I said, sure. I said, yes. I didn't know a whole lot about HR, to be honest. And so it was diving into unknown territory, but I liked working with people and I thought that would be a good match for my skill set. And so I started as an HR assistant, had a real sort of into the fire learning curve, learned through making lots of mistakes, did not have a very strong onboarding or orientation process. And that is sort of meant that I had to learn through making errors, but I learned quickly, and so that was good. And then I built my career slowly through HR, always in sort of a generalist type of role. But my first role was in handling payroll administration, onboarding for new hires, data changes. As Anne mentioned, I've been in the field for over 20 years. And so it was really sort of manual data changes that I was doing. And then had different opportunities that presented themselves and continued to grow my career until I got to a point where I realized I probably also need some educational background as well, and completed my HR certification, and I've had a lot of opportunities. And so I've had really great sponsors, I've had great mentors, and I've had opportunity. Those things combined with hard work have gotten me through to build my career within the same organization through mergers and acquisitions over time. And that's kind of been, I've taken some sideways roles in order to have greater exposure and opportunity. And that's helped me to have a more well-rounded perspective on HR. Being in a generalist role, I've had exposure to all of the different lines, the different segments of HR, but always in sort of a generalist or business advisor, business partner type of role.
Thank you, Shelley. I really appreciate hearing your story. And it is interesting how this was not necessarily something that you wanted to do. It just sort of an opportunity presented yourself. And I think this is a good example of how, when you're starting your career path, you might think that you're doing something, and then someone sees something in you that they feel would be a good direction for you to go into. And because of your skills, your transferable skills working in social services, and you're also, your technical skills, and among other things, you've really been able to thrive in this industry. And just one other little thing I want to point out, the fact that you've had mentors. For folks who are out there right now, if you can find yourself a mentor, I highly encourage it. Shelley is one example of a professional who, again, one of the many reasons why you've succeeded in this industry, but having a mentor of some kind is so invaluable. So thank you for that, Shelley. I really appreciate it. Elizabeth, let's hear about your career in HR. Can we find out about, like, how did you get started, and what has been your career trajectory up to this point?
Absolutely. Thanks again, Anne. And hi, everyone. So I've been in HR for, I'd say, around 30 years. And I started off, I would say, taking labor management relations, graduated from the program at the University of Toronto. I love the program. I mean, I'm obviously dating myself. So, the program had management, sociology, like a full range of subjects that I was very much interested in. And so at the time, the sort of career or job, as it were, that lend itself to that sort of degree was human resources. So I didn't actually choose HR. It kind of like, it made sense. And so my career has been in a variety of industries. I've had great experiences being a business partner, HR generalist, employee relations, labor relations, benefits, you name it. I've led HR departments, again, in a variety of industries, and just thoroughly enjoyed it. I love learning about all the, how do you say, the back of the house stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into a little later on as we talk more about HR. But I always had a passion for social justice. And throughout my career, I've always been doing it on the side of my desk. And I've always also had a passion for teaching and learning and research. And so that's why, throughout my career, I started to take on part-time teaching, just absolutely loved it. In 2017, I embarked on a PhD, which I am hopefully going to be defending this year. And when 2020 came about, I got the opportunity to do my social justice inclusive leadership more, how do you say, less off the side of my desk and more central to my role. And so that brought me to my current state, which is leading DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and accessibility in a law firm past and now at an insurance company. So really loving the trajectory and loving how EDI is now being taken up more and more in HR. Yeah, so that's kind of how I landed where I am today.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was amazing. I picked up so much from that. I just think it's interesting the different areas of HR that you worked in, and the passion for social justice. I'm a social worker myself. I'm not sure if you knew that, Elizabeth, but it's something I've always obviously been interested in. It basically drives me in the work that I do it, and I'm just really appreciative that there are people like you out there who are in HR who are really committed to DEI because it is so important. So, and and even with Shelley as well, starting out in social services, it is interesting how these two sectors, social justice, social services, and HR, these skills are kind of in the same family and really can be used to strengthen your career. So that's incredible. And all the diverse things that you've done in this industry. And again, we're so lucky to have you as an instructor because clearly you're passionate about teaching. So lucky, we're so lucky. Thank you, Elizabeth. And not last but not least, Tony, tell me about your career. How did you get started? And I'd love to hear about your career trajectory.
So it's interesting because the other two panelists talked about getting into HR in some transitional way, as opposed to they woke up in grade 9 one day and said, I've always wanted to do HR. That's going to be my life. I think for a lot of people, it ends up going that way. So my degree was in economics. I was working in an organization and was going to pursue something along those lines. And the very dynamic just new from France, VP of HR said, why don't you work in HR? And I started my career in training, and there's a lot of work mapping we need to do and things that would interest you. And so I started mapping roles and training around that, changing things. And at that time, a lot of hadn't been written around how hard it is to get people to change things. So I was, optimistic. But from that, somebody recognized that I did have this economics background, and the company was launching a large flex benefits program, and the manager of Comp and Ben quit. And so they said, hey, would you like to project manage this? And so I did, and I actually got to like Comp and Ben. I thought it would be boring, and it wasn't. And so then I stayed with it through a couple of jobs, and then working as a communications consultant for a financial institution, helping employers communicate around benefits and stock plans, things like that. And then after working one more time to change a retailer, working for the president to move from, they would say, personnel out of the 1950s into, dynamic HR of the 1990s. And then I always wanted to consult. So after that, I've been working for 25 years, consulting with a variety of organizations, most of it around organizational change, OT, and comp.
Thank you, Tony. That was a great story about how you started your career journey. And I think what's really nice about this panel in particular is you started out in economics, and so again, it's another example of different subjects or areas of expertise that you can bring to this area. So having a background in business has obviously been an asset for you and helped you, do some amazing things in the work that you do. So, whatever background that all of you are coming from, you can leverage those diverse experiences to succeed in HR. And I think these three panelists have demonstrated that exceptionally well. So thank you, Tony. Now I'd like to ask some questions that any one of you can answer, whatever you would feel, this is something that really speaks to you with regards to the question. So what are some of the reasons that you would recommend working in this industry? Is there anyone who'd like to start out by answering this question?
I can start us off if that's okay. And I think this is what really drew me or kept me in the field so long. You really get to know, and I'll use the term the back of the house, right? How things are done, how decisions are made, the thought process, people's vulnerability in stepping into that thought process. Because when you are a trusted advisor, business advisor, and people can trust to just show up as they are, they share kind of their challenges, their hopes. So all that wonderful stuff, the messy stuff and the not so messy stuff, you get to have access to, and you really get to see how you can make an impact, especially that's going to affect different people in the organization. So I think one of the reasons why I highly recommend the field is it's not an easy field by any means. It's very challenging in great ways as well. And you really get to see how things are done, how decisions are made, and the impact that you want to make in an organization.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I can only imagine some of the insights that you get from people, because I just, I think back to the times that I connect with HR folks such as you, even the exit interview when I leave organizations to pursue other opportunities, and that this, the exit interview where you really tell people your HR, I feel comfortable and safe because I'm just telling them how I feel, and also the opportunities I have to share with them where I'd like to go. So to have the opportunity to really get to know people and help people grow in their careers, that must be absolutely incredible. And the impact that you must have, I mean, amazing. Would Tony or Shelley, would you also like to share some additional insights on reasons that you would recommend that you work in this industry?
Yeah, I'd say people. It keeps it interesting. Like every day, every meeting is different because it's about people. So even if it's the same compensation solution or same training program, the people are different. And so they're going to receive it different ways. Management may share, here's what the organization's like. And as you get talking to people, focus groups, or just individually, you get a sense of what it's really like, and that makes it always interesting. It's not like every day is going to be the same. Every day is going to be different because the situations are different.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine it's all about the people. Just even if the particular task is the same, you're dealing with a wide range of folks. I mean, that must be so fascinating. Shelley, what about for you? Like, why would you recommend that folks pursue careers in this industry?
I think I would add on or build on to what Tony has said, because it's working with people, so within the team. And oftentimes people think they want to get into HR because they like people, and they like working with people and so on. really one of the core fundamentals about HR is to understand that you're actually working for people, right? So whether that is the employees, that's managers, that's leadership, it's really bringing together an understanding of their various needs, all of the different stakeholders, and understanding and helping to craft what does that organization structure look like? What's the direction? How do we bring our values, mission, to life within this organization through the programs that we create, the way that we structure the organization, how we help sit at the table and develop strategy for that to meet our objectives. And so it's really it's not so much the decision maker role, but really helping those making the decisions or being on the receiving end of those decisions acclimate to what happens within the organization. I think that's a fascinating aspect of it.
Thanks, Shelley. I mean, I keep thinking you're working for, for the people, for the organization. So for those of you who are listening in, I really hope you're taking notes, because when you're having those interviews and they ask you, why are you interested in this position in HR? Why do you want to work for us? You can explain, I enjoy not only working with people, but I recognize that the importance of HR to work for people and to represent the organization and help the organization to achieve their goals. So this is gold. So please, I hope folks out there who are interested in pursuing HR careers are taking notes, because using this when you're having your interviews will definitely elevate you. And thank you so much for that, Shelley. And now I'm going to kind of be selective about some of my questions, because I'm just trying to think what would be interesting for the folks out there. All right. So as we know, that the labor market right now is very competitive. And in particular, we know that the HR industry is competitive. It seems like a lot of people are interested in getting their foot in the door. How would our wonderful panelists suggest that folks get their foot in the door in HR? Is there anyone from our panel that would like to start off with this, or like to respond to this question first?
I can jump in here. I think the one thing that I've learned from my experience, and also it sounds like is consistent for the other panelists, is really being able to say yes to learning opportunities whenever they present themselves. And so, like, experience is such a powerful teacher that sometimes that means taking on a non-traditional role to learn about the organization or the function, or even about yourself. I know that my foundation, was in early HR, was through a role that taught me sort of the fundamentals about pay and time systems, payrolling and onboarding. And these are really critical functions, so that even though I don't touch these on a daily basis necessarily any longer, I understand the importance of them to at the very basic level of an employee. And so these are things we know that we have to get right, and how to escalate if it's not going the way it should be, to create the best client experience or employee experience. And so whether it's, saying yes to something that's outside of your comfort zone, or saying yes to something that you have never had done before, they all create learning experiences that you can build on as you build your career.
Thanks, Shelley. I actually have a follow-up question to that. So let's say, for example, you're an individual who already has a background in HR and is looking to find another opportunity in HR. In terms of learning opportunities, as someone who's currently not in a paid position, what would you suggest that folks do? Should people, I mean, of course, we're School of Continuing Studies. I always encourage people to take our course, especially if all of you are, the instructors. But in addition to additional courses at U of T, do you recommend, going to a particular site to do industry specific training? LinkedIn has a lot of wonderful training as well. Any suggestions? Because, obviously working in post-secondary, Shelley, I encourage folks to take advantage of learning opportunities, but what are some other learning opportunities if you're not working for a company that HR professionals can take advantage or you think would be good for them?
I would say if your organization offers learning programs, there is a learning management system, for example, explore those to understand the business itself, right? Oftentimes when we're in the field, we understand HR really well. It also takes a really strong knowledge and understanding of the businesses or the companies, the industry. And so educating yourself in that way to be more versatile and to be able to have conversations that are informative, bringing together the HR skill set as well as the business, solving business problems. The other thing I would say, just a little bit outside of the education realm, would be oftentimes people don't think about, let's say, taking a contract option. So if there is a maternity leave or a long-term leave position in the organization, that can be a foot in the door, even though it feels unsecure or unsteady because it's not a permanent, but it does give you the opportunity to have the exposure and to learn, and then to also continue to demonstrate your skills and capabilities.
Thanks, Shelley. And I appreciate the insight as well. I also encourage folks to take chances on contract positions that maybe not permanent, because like you said, it's a way to get your foot in the door, and then you never know that opportunity. It might be extended. It's a great way to network. It's a good way to deal with to manage gaps in your resumes. And so, and also, oh, sorry, one other very important thing. Also, there's less competition. So, with these positions that are permanent full time, you're probably going to, and all of you know all about this because you hire your well, at some point. A lot of people, tons of people are applying to these full-time permanent roles, but if there's a contract position for mat leave, like you said, Shelley, the competition pool for that is a lot less. So if it's a chance that you can take due to your economic situations, I would encourage that. So thanks, Shelley. And would anyone else from our panel like to answer that question? So how can you get your foot in the door in addition to taking advantage of training opportunities and perhaps applying to contract positions that you wouldn't necessarily, apply for? Tony or Elizabeth?
I just add that, yeah, because I work with employers and we agonize over contract or not. I mean, a contract just means there's a fixed end date. If the organization has a downsizing, then that becomes your end date. So it's not like it's a significant differential, but it gives you an opportunity to try something new. I guess the other thing, general rule of thumb in HR, is 70% of your learning comes on the job. So if your HR function or other areas, talk to your manager about, I'd like to be part of a project or a cross-functional team. HR always looks for interesting volunteers. HR is never overstaffed, so they'll never say, no, we don't need your help. But it gives you an opportunity. I guess the other thing is, the three of us described our entry into HR, and it was a time where the designation wasn't as formalized. And so it's not as if we would have been not considered for a role because the CHRP, CHRL was required. Whereas now, if it's required, then you would be eliminated by the applicant tracking system if it's required for the job and you don't have it. So it's a little different. So I would pursue the CHRL, CHRP because it's in a lot of HR jobs.
CHRL, I'm writing this down, and the CHRP. So
sorry, the CHRP is the HRPA's designation. The HRL is that plus experience. You're a HR leader. So, but I guess the other quick thing would be figure out what is your unique selling feature. So I had a student in my class who was applying for jobs and had challenges, and we talked about it, and he's from Brazil and he also speaks Spanish. So I said, apply at Scotiabank. I've had tons of students in the class. They bought all these banks in Latin America, and he got an offer for an interview within 24 hours. And so sometimes you have to think, I have a language skill, or I come from a part of the world and I bring something. What is a Canadian company that's interested in that? I had another student get a job at a medical technologies company because she was super interested in kind of giving back, and the company was a private company and was interested in that. And so it's finding a company who needs your unique talents
That's I thank you for that, Tony. So in addition to signing up for the CHRL or completing the CHRL and CHRP designation, think about ways, unique talents that you can bring to this role, and whether it's international experience, speaking a second language, perhaps it's something that you studied in school that seemingly has nothing to do with the industry, but then that unique background and experience can be translated to a company uh, that reflects that really makes you stand out. And I think a lot of folks forget about that. They think, oh well, I studied, you know, philosophy. This has nothing to do with HR. I'm just going to pretend it doesn't exist, or I'll put way down my resume. But it actually is what makes you unique and helps you to stand out. And of course, working with a lot of internationally trained professionals, folks don't realize that this is actually a value added, bringing that international perspective, sometimes speaking a second language, and that can be a huge asset for you. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Tony. Elizabeth, did you want to add anything to this? Because it is a very important question. The labor market is so hard right now. It's so competitive. What are some things that you would suggest that folks out there, things that they can do to get their foot in the door or can find a job in this industry?
Yeah, just to add on the great advice that our panelists already gave, I would say find opportunities definitely where you can network. I tell my students all the time, or my learners all the time, listen, this is a unique opportunity where you're getting to meet folks who are not only interested in getting into HR, but who are also into HR already, and at different, trajectories in their career. So definitely take this opportunity. LinkedIn, right? Get on LinkedIn, stay connected. And once you form that solid network of folks, keep with them, right? Some organizations have, for example, the legal profession, they have opportunities for other HR professionals to get together and network and share ideas once you're in. But definitely you can network even when you're not in, right? Through the education that you're receiving and the people that you're meeting. The other thing I would also, the two quick things I would say is look for opportunities where you can become a board member, for example, on a voluntary basis, right? Again, expanding your network, developing that leadership skill, that business acumen, like really developing those necessary skills, right? To be able to shine, and it lends itself to potentially, right, getting your foot in the door. And just to build off of what Shelley had said, in terms of keeping your options open, I always have approached my career very curiously. Yes, I love teaching, I love research, but sometimes in my career, those opportunities just weren't around. So instead of saying, I'm out of here, I said, you know what? I'm going to see what other things I can do, be a generalist. Back in the day, we used that term a lot, be a generalist, move to employee relations, labor relations, really expand my knowledge instead of just saying, I'm going to just stick to this. If that's not available, I'm not going to give up, but I'm going to see what other things can enrich my expertise in this field, right? And really set me above the competition. And I think, now more than ever, based on how you described the labor market for HR professionals, we really need to be looking at different ways to do HR in terms of getting into the profession. So some of those things can also help.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So
I have an
being
example of
flexible. Yeah.
that.
Oh, great, Shelley. Thanks.
Yeah, actually, it brought it to mind was actually getting into teaching at the School of Continuing Studies. I really wanted to get into teaching after I'd completed my Bachelor of Ed. And I had an opportunity to interview with the school, and there was a teaching opportunity available, but it was online. I wanted to teach in person. I thought that's my best learning forum. That's how I learn the best, and where I would be best suited. The only opportunity was online, and so I said yes to the opportunity because I wanted to get my foot in the door, and had some learning and growing pains as I learned how to teach online in that environment. But as it turns out, I loved it. And I've been teaching it now, for about 8 years since that time. And it's my form that I prefer. And I never would have known that unless I had taken the opportunity and done something that I wasn't necessarily comfortable with.
Thank you, Shelley. So taking chances, getting yourself, out of that comfort zone, and taking advantage of opportunities that may not necessarily perfectly align with what you do, but these are really incredible opportunities to learn more about things that you like, as in with Shelley's case. And of course, just to add on what Elizabeth said, networking, connect with people that you're in class with if you're taking classes. In-person networking opportunities are incredible. It's amazing, the opportunities are out there on LinkedIn, of course, but in-person events, I don't know if all of you have seen this, but they've actually been on the increase. And I attended one, I think about 2 weeks ago, with a temp agency, and it was full of professionals to network with, and it was free, it was in person, it was incredible. And I wish there were more job seekers there, because it was such an incredible opportunity. So wonderful, wonderful insights. I don't know how we have 10 minutes left of the moderator. Oh my gosh, time just flies. Okay. So I think it's really important. It's because it's just such invaluable information. It's important to find out from the three of you, what are some trends, recent trends in this sector that candidates in this industry need to be aware of? Because we know that things are always changing, always growing in HR. I also wonder about the role of AI. I know that DEI has increased in terms of a trend. I hate calling it a trend, but something that in this industry that this values. But I'd like to hear more. So where's some recent trends in HR that folks need to be aware of, and maybe retrain to and go back to school to find out more and to educate themselves? Any anyone would like to start, please?
Well, you mentioned AI. AI will have a huge impact on organizations and hence HR. I was in a meeting where everybody but me were IT leaders, and they said, like, why are you here? And I said, everything anybody else talked about changing jobs, whether it eliminates jobs or you use it to enhance a job, it will have significant impact in the coming years. So all of that needs to be guided and supported by HR.
So AI is definitely a trend that is on the increase. I am concerned a little bit, Tony, about because of these technologies, which I know are incredible, but I wonder if they'll take away some of the roles of HR professionals such as yourselves. Is that something that any of you are concerned about, or am I just totally jumping the gun on this one? What do you think? Is that a concern, or should we be concerned about it? Or you don't have to worry about it. HR is always going to be about people. We might automate hiring systems, but we always need, we know we always need HR, but folks like you. But is it concern? Are any of you concerned that AI is going to take over the HR professional, the career of an HR professional?
I would just say, just like any other technological change, for the most part, it eliminates some opportunities, but it also creates opportunities. And I think once you're dealing with people in the business, having those, human connections, you can't really replace that. So yeah, there might be some jobs or some elements or segments of jobs that go to AI, but then there are other opportunities that will be created as a result of that. And I think no matter, as we're engaging with AI as HR professionals who are also centering DEI, which is one of the trends I was going to mention, you need to be, involved in it. You just can't have AI that takes up biases, right? Kind of do your work for you. No, that could put you, your organization, at risk, right? So you need to very much be at the forefront of what is going on. So I don't really think in terms of that, it will take away the value that the human, interaction, that the human connection and the human analysis, when you start to understand how biases show up in a very subtle way and systemic way, you need human beings to step in front of that and to ensure that the HR programs and policies are really inclusive, which means getting rid of those systemic barriers. So that's what I would say for that.
Thanks,
I would
Elizabeth.
agree, and I would say that even if we think about the design of the AI tools and the algorithms that exist within those AI tools, were designed by humans with biases. And so we have
True.
to understand the impact of those and can they be creating systemic issues? And that's where the need for human intervention comes into play. I think that's particularly true in recruiting. A lot of AI technology is used in sort of sorting through candidates. And if that AI algorithm was designed with a, from a particular lens, then it has the impact of discriminating in unconsciously. So that's absolutely an area that needs to have human and will continue to need to have human intervention. I would also, there was a quote from someone at an event in my organization, and they said, AI will not replace human beings, but human beings who are not familiar with and able to utilize AI will be replaced. And so I think it speaks to the need to be able to stay current with the technology, continue to educate yourself so that you understand how to fit in and be that human intervention within the process.
Thanks, Shelley. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, because I think back to folks I've worked with who aren't who have, I mean, I'm not exactly great with technology, but I had to take some time to learn the technologies in order to keep up. And I think one of the great things about, one of the fortunate things about technological changes and improvements is that if you want to learn about a particular program, you can do it online. You can do it independently. There are courses that you can take for free. Some are paid, but at least those opportunities are available. But besides technology and AI, so I am curious again more about, the importance of DEI and social justice. So because this is such an important, I hate calling it a trend, movement, recognition, I guess I would say, in HR, would you suggest that folks who are in this industry or interested in this industry study courses around social justice as they pertain to hiring practices, or in order to stay current? What are some thoughts? Elizabeth, I'm going to go back to you if that's okay. Is this something that you would recommend that folks do in order to stay up with the HR trends?
Yeah, so what we're seeing since 2020 is that the sentiments towards equity, diversity, inclusion, accessibility, belonging, however we want to take it up, it's not going away, right? It's however, what's happening is that these roles, the expertise is now being brought into HR to kind of oversee. So it's becoming part of an HR department's role. And so as leaders of HR, who, let's face it, the traditional courses that got you your designation, what have you, did not necessarily center in the way in which we're being called to center aspects of DEI, A and B, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and accessibility. So as HR professionals, we know this, right? We have to stay on top of what's going on in terms of research, what's going on in terms of the law that impacts the employee-employee relationship, what's going on in terms of the business in which we're doing our stuff. We can't do our work in isolation, and also stay on top of what's impacting HR, right? So we can be that trusted advisor. DEI is a part of that. DEI is a part of that world now. So long answer to your question, Anne, yes, I think we would do a disservice to the profession if we don't embark on really educating ourselves, holding ourselves accountable, and really having that proper introspection as to how we feel about, right, being a part of being DEI leaders or leaders of DEI. The other thing too, I'll also caution is that DEI should not rest alone with HR. Okay, it's something that we have to take up and be very well, we need to understand it. If it's not us who's doing it, then it's folks with that expertise who are working with us very closely. But DEI goes beyond just what we do with the employee base, right? It's how we create services, products, what have you, offerings that really impact the community, the broader community outside of our space as well. So it's not only an internal focus, it's an external focus. So I just caution as that becomes a quote unquote trend that we're seeing, where HR is being, DEI is coming into HR alone, that it just doesn't sit there. It has to be something that we bring outside to marketing and other, right? Business or aspects of the industries of business that we are part of. So
Thanks, Elizabeth. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I don't think it's fair for um, HR folks to be solely. I don't think it's. I don't think it. I mean, it's not effective if the folks who are in HR get solely, tasked with this, because I think that it's really just sort of like to do lip service. But in order to really embrace a more inclusive workplace, I think everyone needs to get involved. And if you think about it, all of you who are out there who are interested in HR and who are already working in HR, I mean, you have a huge responsibility, because I mean, this is very I think this is DEI is just so important in terms of like hiring practices and how people are treated, and having more inclusive work environments, which is so important. You brought up so many very incredible points, Elizabeth. I'm really loving my conversation with the three of you. I can see it's 1 o'clock. So what I'm going to do is, and believe it or not, I only got to 3 of my questions, but that's okay. It's just engaging with all of you has been so much fun. So right now I'd like to throw it to all of the rest of our participants. So for those who are out there and listening in our incredible panel, if you have questions that you'd like any of our panels to answer, please do put them in the chat. If I'm feeling that, we need a little bit of encouragement, I also have additional questions. But again, if you have any questions for our esteemed panelists, please type them in the chat and I will ask them what their thoughts are. So anything that you'd like to know, this is your opportunity. Oh, here we go. First question from, and I really hope I'm saying this right, Thuvaraga. I apologize if I'm not saying your name correctly. Thank you. Thank you, Thuvaraga. What does it take to teach at U of T's School of Continuing Studies in HR? That's a good question. If any of our panelists would like to answer that, I know we had Marissa on. It looks like she's gone, but that's okay. She might have been able to answer that. She's responsible for that. But would anyone like to take this on? What does it take to teach at U of T's SCS in HR? Good question. Anyone?
I think it takes a combination of subject matter expertise in some aspect of the field of HR, as well as some experience, educational background in teaching as well. So you get the best of both worlds, right? The industry experience and knowledge that you bring to the program, to the curriculum, and to be able to bring that curriculum to life, but also an understanding of adult learning, teaching principles, that sort of thing.
Thanks, Shelley. So combination of industry expertise and also teaching experience. Tony, we haven't heard from you for a bit. Anything additional you'd like to add to that? What does it take to, do you need a master's? That's a good question too. Do you need Tony, I'm going to throw it back to you for this one. Do you need a master's to teach at U of T's SCS in HR?
No, I don't have one. And so it's based on experience. I think if Marissa were here, she said they hire people who are, experts in the field and have that experience, and they can bring it into the classroom rather than somebody who can take them through the theory. And so that kind of sets the School of Continuing Studies apart. I would say for the person, an interest in talking to people, engaging with students, sharing information. So passion around that.
Thank you so much. So you don't need a master's. I think that there's a lot of misconception out there that in order to work at U of T, you need a master's to teach the courses. You need a master's at SCS. It's different if you obviously work for U of T Central, but we're all about hiring folks with experience who are leaders in the industries that they're teaching in, but also that teaching experience. You don't need a master's. Absolutely. Thanks for that. Thanks for asking that question, Thuvaraga. Any other questions out there? Oh, there's another question. Oh, we're getting some really great questions. I'm so happy. Okay. Nestor would like to know, is there a program that includes sociology and HR content? What a great question, because sociology, I would think, would go hand in hand with HR. Would anyone like to add to answer this question? Any thoughts? Do we know of any? If you don't, that's totally fine. I can maybe go back to that later.
We had a number of sociology courses in my undergrad, and it really does underpin HR. A lot of the behavioral and other areas we covered, I still talk to my students about, and it hasn't changed. So, Maslow's hierarchy is 70 years old, and it's still being used and discussed. And so a lot of those principles and ideas about group behavior and even helping organizations think through what an announcement will have as an impact and how to mitigate that through questions, communication, things like that, thinking through the impacts in advance, all comes from sociology.
Thanks. So it seems to me, Tony, that maybe there isn't, that we're aware of a particular program, a specific program that includes sociology and HR. But if you study sociology, those the things that you're studying it's so applicable in this industry. So if you're a sociology major, there are so many aspects that you can pull from the education to help you succeed. Thank you for that, Tony. Next, we have some question. We have a question. I just kind of agree. Okay, what might be a potential pathway for someone to transition to an employee designer's I'm going to say that again because it's quite lengthy. What might be a potential pathway for someone with a background in design thinking to transition to an employee experience designer's role? This Arun doesn't have a background in HR. Is anyone able to answer this question? Is it a bit too specific, maybe? Hard to say. You know what I would suggest? Oh, go ahead, please. Yes, Shelley.
I will say that one of the trends I think in HR is around data and being able to tell stories that are evidence-based and data-driven. Having, the ability to design or create or work with more sophisticated human resource management system tools that can harness data, analyze it, interpret it, and use it to be able to inform the decisions that are made by the business. I think having the skill set you've described as a transferable one that would definitely lend itself to that sort of back end of HR systems design.
Thank you, Shelley. Arun, I hope that you were taking notes of this because that was such invaluable information. We're again providing an example of how you can leverage unique experience to help you to succeed in HR. Thank you so much. That was so invaluable, Shelley. Let's see. Nestor wanted to know, this is an interesting question. Could it be said that sociology is the essence of HR? Anyone would like to answer that question? Is it the essence of HR? Elizabeth, did you want to answer that?
I think, that's the beauty about HR. There's not one discipline that you can benefit from, right? Business, sociology in terms of patterns, right? Sociology, societal patterns, understand behavior, psychology, right? Understand individuals, sociology, social work. Like there's so many different disciplines, even understanding the historical background. I know when I'm dating myself again, my undergrad, understanding the history of labor. There was a labor history course that was part of the labor management relations program, to situate that we just didn't, like how did we get here? Right? Understanding that background. Social justice, like there's so many aspects, economics, like just so many. So I think, the best advice I always got when I started my undergrad was take what you enjoy. And again, I understand that was a long time ago. So I preface it by saying that, but take what you enjoy. And I actually tell my daughter that right now. So take what you enjoy and, you'll figure out a way to make a career out of that. You just got to remain curious and open. A lot of the things that we talked about here already. I just wanted to add on the piece in terms of what Shelley said about data. So important, right? I also encourage my learners to find out what organizations do research on a regular basis. Reputable organizations do research on a regular basis that can help inform your recommendations, right? For what HR initiatives and how you would inform your HR strategies and even your DEI strategies for your organization, right? Because a lot of your recommendations need to be, as Shelley indicated, backed by research. But sometimes we don't have, the capacity to do that research ourselves. So really arm yourself with what organizations, right? And there are very reputable ones that pull data that you can leverage when you're kind of promoting, your HR strategy and developing your HR strategy, because that's very important to inform that as well. So I had to add that too.
Thank you for that. So there's so many industries you can use that will help to inform your career as an HR in HR. And I love the suggestion with the data and doing research to help to inform your HR strategy. I think by having that background and research and presenting that to interviews, that will really present you very strongly, which is so important. Thank you so much. Next, I'm going to get a question from Bala Kumraj. Will an IT background? Oh, this is actually kind of what you answered. A question was, will an IT background with CHRP certification land a job as a data analyst? I'm not sure if that's necessarily an HR related question, but I will get back to that. Balakum Raj. Next, oh, this is another good one too. Thuvaraja. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna just say, if you have an IT background and you have an HR designation, then that is terrific, because IT, a lot of the jobs are hot skills, are in demand, hard to find and keep. And for some people in IT, you have more credibility if you understand the technology and can help and coach managers in that function. So I think that combination is really good. I don't know about my other two panelists, but usually the IT people are the ones that get a lot of focus.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think? I mean, I think that any IT would leverage any career, but in particular, I can see how it would help you in HR. Did Elizabeth, Shelley, did you want to add to that, or would maybe go to the next question? Okay, so I was actually thinking about something. So we have incredible questions. I'll get through the ones that are in the chat, but we have a fairly small group, and this is actually a good thing, because if you feel comfortable, like I'll ask a few more questions from the chat, but you can turn off your mic, raise your hand, and actually chat with one of our panelists. This helps you with your networking and engagement. So I'd like to throw it out there. If anyone would like to ask a question, you can unmute yourself, raise your hand. That's a great opportunity to network with our incredible panelists. So feel free to do that. Do we have anyone that would like to ask a question? Oh, we have Thuvaraja again. Hi, Thuvaraja. Are you able to unmute? There you go. Hi. You can turn your camera too if you feel comfortable. There you are. Oh, it's a break. There you are. Hi.
Hi.
Good to see
So
you.
I'm just going to read my question, then
Yeah.
put in. I was just going to ask, what kind of positions can you apply for with HR professional certificate, both, but like with no HR work experience? And it's been a while that I actually took my HR certificate, but I'm still interested in working in HR. So it's just that, yeah, so I don't have work experience, and it's kind of like, you have experience to get in, but then you don't have it. It's kind of that loop. So it's a little bit hard. So I was just wondering, like what kind of positions, like, does it have to be like entry level, or can I even do like a little bit higher? But then I guess it would require training, but then some jobs don't.
Would anyone like to answer this question? Really good question. Shelley, yes, please. What a good question.
I do think it depends on the role, right? Like if you're thinking about a specific function, compensation, pension, benefits, those types of areas typically do require some background or experience, unless it's an entry-level role. The one thing, and I think it answers your question as well as Manju's question that's next, in terms of the potential for both networking and an opportunity to have some experience or exposure is through the HRPA, your local chapter. If you're a member of your chapter, they have a lot of events. There's oftentimes volunteer opportunities that exist through there that can allow you to get some hands-on experience. So I would encourage you to explore that avenue.
Okay, thank you.
That was great. Thanks so much, Shelley. And Manju asked, you answered Manju's question to a certain extent, Shelley. Thank you. So we'll move on. Does anyone else have any other questions that they would like? You can turn your camera, you can unmute yourself. We have a lovely small group. This is your chance to network, people. It's invaluable. Anyone would like to raise their hand and ask a question? Oh, we have another, oh, Manju. Manju, you're here. Great. Okay, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so I have an MBA background, but I have a very long career gap and part-time, full-time volunteering. It seems to be very challenging to get into a basic role, like even a customer service representative roles, to get into the company, to start at a very basic level, given that the job market situation. So I don't know, like if there is anything else that could be done. So the certain element seems to be very challenging because when I tried applying for financial products companies, they prefer to have financial background as such. So I still find like I'm still puzzled on trying to understand. I'm open for any job, like just trying to be out there and start doing the work, but still I find I'm missing something. Like I'm still studying for my CHRP and Shelly's my teacher, and yeah, so I'm enjoying the coursework at continuing studies, but then it gives me confidence. So so the learning part is being fulfilled, but to get the practical aspect, I'm still struggling to understand the market and just tune myself to the needs. So any inputs from any one of you would really give me a direction. Thank you.
That's a good question. I mean, it's so hard, right? Like you have education, but then how do you get your foot in the door? I mean, for programs that have practicum, that's a really good thing. But where's some other things that you would suggest Manju do?
I do like Elizabeth's suggestion from earlier on about volunteering for boards. If there is an area or an aspect of HR that is of interest to you, there may be an association, there may be an organization in your community that you could participate in as a voluntary board member. And that not only, I mean, I think it's just such a win-win to be able to contribute something in your community, have some, some purpose, experience, and be able to build your network.
So volunteering for a board, or would you say, Shelley, or any of the panelists, any kind of position, any volunteer opportunity that's any kind of HR related opportunity? I mean, because I know the board is great, especially who you're surrounded with, but what about another HR type related volunteer position? What do you think? Is that just very difficult? Because I know all about volunteering, but more like, frontline.
If you have a background in something, then you can go to a company in that industry and say, I have this background, I'm looking to get into HR. If it's a smaller organization, they may take the risk. And particularly talent acquisition or recruitment is that kind of gateway where it helps if you know what you're interviewing for and when people are responding to questions, what they're talking about. So if you have a background and it may be technical, it's a good gateway to leverage that into, and it may not be a full-time role, but it could be something that gets you into HR. I guess the other thing is that when you say networking, people think about this is networking. I tell all my students that when they do the group project, they are actually meeting a group of people, and it becomes a great network, and encourage them to continue to stay in touch, and many of them do. And we use LinkedIn as a class as well to stay in touch. So all of that is networking, and that project group is somebody that, assuming you contributed, is a good group of people to network with.
So your classmates can also help you with your network. And that can really, and also, I would also encourage folks such as Manju who are maybe recent graduates in the area of HR, because I know you have another incredible academic background as well, but also, highlight the projects that you've completed in your program in HR, because those are professional projects. And so by doing that, it's changed your mindset. Okay, instead of thinking, I have no experience, you actually do, Manju. It's just a matter of being able to highlight it on your resume and not just focusing on, I'm a student. No, you are a professional with all these things to bring to the table. These are the HR projects that you've brought to the table. And this is how, and these are the different ways that you can elevate yourself as a recent graduate, as a student, in current practices. And there's so many things that you can do. But thank you both. That was amazing. any other questions from the audience? If you'd like to, please feel free to. Oh, Dhuvraja raised her hand. Yes,
That's right.
Dhuvraja. Hi.
I was wondering, is it possible to get your email or your best contact? Because you said in the beginning you said that you do like one-on-one to like help with job, so that would be great. So I don't know like how you wanted to, if you want to put in the chat or up to you. How would you? Is it possible to get your contact?
We got it. My good friend
Oh.
Carla. She put
Thank
there.
you.
Thank you. Yes. So please feel free to reach out to me. And for our offerings like the one-on-one, you can go back into the portal, and I think it's called career coaching. But thanks for asking that, Dhuvraja. Yeah. So for anyone who's out there and interested in accessing one-on-one support for me, please do go back to our portal, sign up for career coaching, and you can also reach out to me at the email address provided in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. But thanks for asking, Dhuvraja. Really appreciate it. Any other questions you can ask that you'd like to ask our HR professionals? Again, this is your opportunity. I'm actually really happy the group is somewhat small, because this gets the opportunity for you to network and really get to know folks and ask questions that maybe are difficult to get the answers to, for you, because we have these professionals here. So any other questions, if you want to raise your hand, please feel free to do it. Otherwise, actually, I do have a question from the chat I'd like to bring to the table because it's so good. To any of the panelists, and I was actually going to ask a question like this, so good. What's the most challenging aspect of your career in HR? Wow. Yeah, that's a good question. Challenging aspect of your career in HR. Anyone? Elizabeth, let's hear it.
I can share. And again, the concept was already brought up by the other panelists. HR should be seen as a trusted business partner. And I think when I look back at my career, some of the challenges I had was some leaders, not all, some leaders, because again, 30-year career, HR has definitely evolved since then. So more and more organizations, leaders are getting that, HR doesn't do a manager's job for you, in other words, right? So early on in my career, there were times when I faced some leaders who thought, well, okay, it's HR's role to manage my people. It's HR's role to, discipline my people. And delicately trying to say, well, no, we work with you, we give you the tools, we make sure it's vetted, we guide you, we consult with you, we do all that wonderful stuff. But really, it's the leader of people, their role, they have an HR role. So the beauty of it is that the career has evolved, the profession has evolved, over the decades. So more and more we're seeing organizations get it. But there are times when, folks who are new to their people leadership role, they still kind of defer to that mentality whereby, oh, okay, I don't need to discipline my folks if needed. I'll just ask HR to do it, or right. And no, there's a role for you. So in my career, that was a challenge, and I do see it seep up here and there, speaking with other colleagues who are directly dealing with that. So it's just something to be mindful of.
That is, I can only imagine that all the tasks, like I know this might sound far off, but laying people off. I mean, that I think that I can imagine how that's a very difficult task, and probably a lot of managers might want to defer to HR to at least. I mean, you have to be involved in the process, but I can imagine how it must be difficult to advocate for yourself and say, no, this is not my job as an HR professional to manage your profession, to manage your team. But yeah, absolutely. I can
just to clarify, we do have a role in, making sure if it's layoffs, for example, termination, that, it's vetted and all that. But in terms of, if, for example, a written warning or how we coach people to do stuff, there is a role for managers to play, and you just can't defer all of it to HR. Definitely, you have to involve us to make sure that you are doing it the right way and that it's not putting you or the organization at risk. But it is a partnership, and there is that role. So, yeah.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And actually, because I love this question so much, Tony, what, in your opinion, is what are some of the most challenging aspects of your in HR?
People. The same answer I gave makes it the most fun, because it's never the same, and people are changing. And I think leveraging off what Elizabeth was saying is that also working with managers to make sure the messages that should be conveyed or clearly conveyed. You know, in compensation, it's merit increases at the end of the year. HR would like them to be spread further because people perform at various levels. But for a manager to say, well, you know, Elizabeth did a great job, I'm going to give her 6% because that's what HR suggests. But then in order to meet my budget, I have to give Tony nothing. And that's a tough conversation. And so they're not going to do it. And so that's where they need a lot of support and guidance from HR to say, we are trying to be strategic about how we do these things. And you have to, you know, do what not HR suggests, but they need support and training in how to do it.
Thank you. So people, that's a challenging aspect in providing that support and training to managers to equip them to have these conversations and to make these very important decisions. Shelley, how about yourself? What are like some of the biggest challenges in this industry that you found?
Similar vein as both Elizabeth and Tony have talked about, it's really sort of been balancing between representing the interests of employees and managers in the organization, right? So guiding employees in their careers versus executing on a reduction in force or layoff based on change in organization strategy. And so when are we, you know, in that role to advocate on the employee's behalf, and when are we in that role to advocate on behalf of management or leadership, and just finding that sometimes that's a decision call, right, by the HR professional in being objective and determining what's the role we're supposed to play in that situation. I think that can be challenging.
That's incredible. I mean, I was just, you know, and thinking about this, like having to be objective because you can't, you know, you can't necessarily all, you know, just side with the employee or the manager. You have to sort of be in between and represent both interests. And I can only imagine how hard that must be to navigate at times, you know, having both interests at heart. Wow, incredible. Thank you. We have another question from Dana. So, and there's, it's a comment, but I think it's worth bringing up. So it's always better to consult with HR when you're managing people, even if you think you know what you're doing. I mean, I think that makes perfect sense. Would you echo that? Like just, you know, instead of managers jumping the gun and doing what they feel is right, consult with HR because you folks are the people that know the policies, and can really do things correctly. Because if you don't, I can only imagine the implications. So, yeah, amazing comment, Dana. Next question from Veronica from the chat, and I think this will be our last question. How did this happen? Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh, Veronica asks, in light of the diverse linguistic backgrounds, often encountered in HR roles, what strategies or resources would you suggest for enhancing communication effectiveness in multicultural workplaces? Wow, that's a good question. Would anyone like to take this? I know Elizabeth in particular has a background in EDI, and Shelley did a lot of work in this too, obviously starting this. So all of you can answer this, but who would like to answer this? Great question.
I'm happy to start it off. There's a number of initiatives organizations can take. What initially comes to mind, if I'm reading the question correctly, is employee resource groups, or affinity groups, however, you know, we've labeled them in organizations or your organization labels them, and what they are is they are voluntary employee-led groups that come together on the basis, could be on a social identity. It could be, you know, shared lived experience, what have you, such as being a parent, social identity, such as gender, or what have you, language, ethnicity, what have you. And they make recommendations to HR and the organization as to how policies, procedures, practices can be more inclusive of the needs of folks who identify with that ERG, that group, that we might not be aware of. So I think that's one of many resources that you can create and support and endorse in your organization, ERGs, that can lend itself to this, one of the ways in which communication effectiveness in organizations that are multicultural, for sure, can help.
Thank you, Elizabeth. What a great suggestion. Any other suggestions? Because this is, again, fantastic question. It's a big topic. Thanks for the thumbs up. Yeah, that was a great answer. Tony or Shelley, would you like to add anything to this?
I would say that at a sort of a micro level, a one-to-one level within the organization is creating a culture of curiosity. I think actually, Elizabeth, you used that word from the very beginning around so that we're not enforcing our views, language on others, but really being open to understanding how do people want to be addressed, what are they comfortable with, and having that level of awareness and sensitivity within the workplace. Just being conscious of that, being curious, asking people versus making assumptions, I think can start that conversation at a really and build relationships and trust at a one-to-one level.
Thank you, Shelley. So being curious, asking questions, not making assumptions. Thank you. Tony, any additional insights on this fantastic question?
I was going to say leverage your strength. So if you happen to have a language skill that an organization can use, then that's terrific. So it could be an organization that has a subsidiary in a different country and needs to have a Canadian person. So for instance, companies with IT operations in India and want to have a Canadian HR person who can actually because they speak English, but same thing with Quebec. If you speak French, there are companies who need a French speaking HR person in Ontario, and so leverage whatever strengths you may have.
So leverage your strengths, whether it's, you perhaps you speak another language outside of English where the company could use it to help them to succeed in their goals. There are a lot of different ways you can do this. Wow. So this brings us to the end of our Industry Insights panel. We're off for the summer, everyone. And we ended with a bang. I really enjoyed myself. I hope all of you out there. Thanks, Ellie. I'm glad to see you out there. Yeah, it's just been fantastic. I really enjoyed it. All the three of you have been amazing. Our participants have asked some. I just love your questions. Reach out to us on LinkedIn, reach out to me because, this is just the beginning of a conversation. And, the summer's a good time to relax, but also, network with people and engage. This will be available. A recording will be available on our website. For those, I just want to give one last thing too. I'm going to do a quick screenshot. So whenever you're ready. Ooh, okay, I'm going to do this. You can turn your camera on or turn your camera off. I'm going to share this on LinkedIn. I've never done this before. Oh, good. Looks like I look awful. So your faces may be on there and there it is. So if you really don't want me to share this, or if you have a problem with it, please do let me know. I do respect your privacy. So on that note, thank you, everyone. I will be in touch with the three of you shortly. I hope to hear from all of you also. And yeah, round of applause. Thank you, everyone. This has been so much fun, and I look forward to continue to connect with all of you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Stay cool. Thanks, panelists. You're amazing. We'll be in touch shortly, everyone. Bye.